You're listening to the Institute of Commissioning and Assurance, where commissioning isn't a phase, it's project leadership. Unlock the systems-based approach that is reshaping delivery of today's most complex infrastructure projects, from energy systems to industrial processes to transport systems, plus much more. Say no to project failure and say yes to value creation, accountability, and successful project outcomes. Here's your host, Paul Turner.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Institute of Commissioning and Assurance. I'm Paul Turner, founder and CEO of ICxA, and today I'm truly honored to be joined by Heinz, Inabnit, the chairman of the ICxA Advisory Council and vice president of completions and commissioning for the Americas at WSG Energy Services. Heinz brings decades of global leadership experience and a passion for turning strategic vision into measurable results. Heinz, it's a real pleasure to have you here today.
Hey, Paul. Thanks for having me. It's actually the pleasure is mine for being asked to be part of this team and into this role. So I'm really looking forward to being here today.
Yes, definitely looking forward to seeing what we can accomplish. And for those watching live, please feel free to add any questions into the chat, whether you're watching on LinkedIn or YouTube. At the end, we'll have a chance to get those questions answered by Heinz, and he can share his commissioning, startup, and operational expertise for everyone that's watching. So let's start, Heinz, with your story. You've built your career around transforming vision into action across the energy sector. How did you first develop your passion for strategic leadership and transformation in the projects and commissioning industry?
Yeah, my career was a funny one. I grew up in a small ranching farming community in southern Alberta, and the big player in town at the time was the Shell Waterton gas complex. And obviously growing up in kind of a ranching community and being next to industry, it's kind of a mixed contrast of what that looks like. And I was fortunate enough to actually start getting involved in a couple of early summer jobs and tried my hand in instrumentation at the facility and kind of cut my teeth into the energy industry through that avenue. And honestly, it started at a really young age. I was literally 17 years old, and I had my first journeyman that I worked under at the time, and he was a great leader and a great mentor. And he's probably not listening to this, but he's out there still commissioning in the field today. And his name's Tim Stushnoff, and he was the first journeyman that I ever worked under. And fortunate enough, we crossed paths for a very short period of time. I went different ways. Obviously, I went to school and went to SAIT and did my apprenticeship and all those things. And years later, I ended up getting a call from him for the opportunity to join my first commissioning project. And most people, in their career, you don't get to join commissioning right away. You got to cut your teeth somewhere else in the industry and get some experience. But I was still pretty green, and I was pretty fortunate to get this call pretty early on. And I got to start working with some great mentors and leaders, and it just really sparked my passion into seeing how, with great leadership, how you can build strong teams. And I think I'm a prodigy of the leaders that helped me from a young age, and so it just really drove me to want to be that for the next generation.
And I completely agree. Having that mentorship, having that leadership is critically important as we're developing earlier in our careers. Your journey sounds very similar to mine. It's always seeking out that leadership, seeking out that ability to want to learn and a thirst for knowledge. It's definitely helpful to have some of that guidance to get into this commissioning industry for sure. Now, you've worked on several large projects, leading worldwide teams across several continents. How has this global experience and leadership shaped your leadership philosophy and approach to project development?
Yeah, it's definitely been a work in progress. I think that, nobody could say they probably started out as a great manager. And through the years, I was fortunate. My previous leadership team and management team really entrusted in me a lot, and they gave me a lot of confidence into trial. And obviously, I will be remiss to say I didn't have some errors in my leadership, and I learned lots. And I think what made me good was that I was able to take that feedback and make the changes needed to become a good leader. as you start leading projects, you see how teams react, and you realize how you need to change your philosophies in certain environments. And I used to say that my one superpower was I could take a band of misfits and actually turn them into a rock star team, because I found that sometimes people cast team members aside because they say, oh, they're not good at this, because in the commissioning world especially, I find we're very hyper fixated, borderline autistic when it comes to detail and procedure, and so people get caught up in the ways. But what we realize is that our teams can be built of a multitude of people, and what made strong teams was finding what people were good at on your team and really using those advantages to build the teams around the people you had. So.
And I've heard you mention in the past that leadership is really rooted in inspiration, resilience, and mentorship. Can you share how these values show up in the way that you lead your teams today?
Yeah, so I had a good mentor in my family, and both my mom and dad were entrepreneurs running both a cattle ranch and a restaurant, being first generation Canadians, immigrated to Canada in the early 70s, and they showed a lot of hustle and vigor and pushed through and became great business people themselves. And so I had great mentors right from an early age, and then the mentors that I had through work just kind of reinforced the power of mentorship. And then I started to see ways for myself to give back into the organization, and so I do support a bunch of mentoring charities and things like that, because I truly see how the youth that are coming up are the future of this industry. I mean, commissioning is no different than any of the other trades where we have a aging population of skill, and we need to mentor the next generation before that knowledge is lost. And so it's become really important to me that mentoring is ingrained into the commissioning world.
It's become really important for sure. As our wise commissioning experts are retiring, they're taking that expertise with them, and we need those mentorship processes to be able to transfer that knowledge to the next generation that can lead projects to success. You mentioned charities, and you've been a longtime supporter of Big Brothers and Big Sisters. Why is mentorship so important to you personally, and how has it influenced how you build teams and organizations?
Well, it goes back to that kind of story of the band of misfits, and how if given a chance, you can be surprised at how strong of a team you can build. And a lot of times from the outside, not everyone's born with that silver spoon and that opportunity, that comes. And I was one of those people that, opportunity came my way, but it's what you do with that opportunity. And I find with good mentorship, you can train, or you can help people and youth have that leg up that they might not normally have. And now what they do with that is up to them. But you'd be surprised that the small opportunity that you can give somebody who's hungry, the drive that they have to be the best. So it's actually really heartwarming when you see it happen, and you only need to see it happen once to be fully sold on the opportunity for it. So
I agree for sure. Yeah, watching that development take place is very rewarding. And from our perspective at the ICxA, we're super thrilled to have your leadership and mentorship part of this global movement to elevate the importance of commissioning on projects. What motivated you to step into this leadership position with ICxA?
Well, as we say, long time listener, first time caller. But I've been watching what you guys have been doing for a long time, and it's something that's near and dear to my heart, and honestly something that has always been on my mind. And right now I really truly see the power and the momentum that ICxA has in the industry. And I think that especially with the types of people and the strength and background of the people who are becoming involved with the organization right now, it's something that I want to be a part of. And I truly see, hey, not necessarily a grassroots movement, but the work that you guys have done already, and our ability to now take that and really run with it with some really strong members on the advisory board, that we can help catapult this globally, as we said. So
Absolutely, yeah, to support the global mission of improved project performance, which is so badly needed in the industry. So, from your perspective, what is the Advisory Council's primary purpose, and how does it strengthen ICx's ability to achieve these global mission goals that we're undertaking here?
Yeah, it goes back to that piece of the knowledge base and making sure that that knowledge gets shared. And what I really like about it right now is that we have industry leaders from a multitude of companies. So we are getting a broad spectrum of truly commissioning experts that are coming together right now on this advisory board to help review that standard. And honestly, it's right in the name. I mean, with advisory, we want to help support build a basic standard across the board that all commissioning companies or project teams understand when it comes to what is commissioning. Let's keep it the same. Let's use, I always joke that you can ask 7 people in a room what they think, what their definition of pre-com com is, and you'll get 7 different answers. And that will be no different within this advisory council. But our goal here is to set a baseline standard, the minimum expectation of what commissioning should look like.
Absolutely, and I think that diversity is critically important, like you mentioned, because there has been no standard. There's been everybody's got a different opinion of how to finish projects, but it's kind of chaos at the end. And we do have some real highly experienced individuals on the advisory council, which is going to make this super amazing. Not to have Paul's way or Heinz way or anybody specific's way of commissioning, but to gather that collective wisdom of the industry and write this down in a standard that everybody can benefit on projects. So how can this diversity of perspectives accelerate the global adoption of commissioning and outcome assurance on projects?
Well, it comes down to repetition, right? I mean, it's the age old, what makes commissioning successful is being able to replicate it. And I think that if we can build a standard that, meets the basis of a multitude of industries, we can then replicate it on projects over and over again. And once we can replicate the success of proper commissioning, the standard sells itself. And that way, projects are executing more effectively and efficiently because they've been commissioned properly.
That replication is key for sure. We need a consistent method to be able to complete projects, which currently doesn't exist in the industry. It's kind of scattered all over the place. So this global movement that ICxA is undertaking is definitely going to help all projects across all industries succeed in meeting initial expectations for cost, time, and scope. So as chairman of the ICxA Advisory Council, what principles will guide how the council collaborates and executes the strategic plan that we're undertaking?
Well, the roadmap that we have, that we've been laid out here by yourself and the board, I think has very clear direction. And I think that's what we need. Is we need key direction, deliverables, and timelines. And as part of the advisory board, our role will be to review those deliverables and obviously meet the timelines. And the biggest and first piece of that is those standards and reviewing those standards and setting the common goal of saying, yep, we agree, this is the standard and this is how we're going to start driving this forward into industry.
And this strategic plan definitely does set a bold direction for the industry and for project delivery. When we're talking about delivering ISO international standards or ANSI standards or any specific regional standards that are required, essentially integrating commissioning and outcome assurance into policy and governance. It is quite a strategic plan that's setting this direction and movement going forward. What stands out to you as the most critical milestones for the year ahead to accomplish some of these milestones?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think the biggest thing that we're going to set out, the number one in my piece is the standards. So once we develop these standards, those are going to be available for everybody, to have a look at. And I really am excited about having these standards reviewed. It's our first goal. It's our first timeline. We're going to start having monthly meetings here, reviewing and putting out these standards. That's going to be the first piece. And honestly, the second piece is going to really drive into how we implement that into the industry. So whether that's into financial or governance institutions, or into, start piloting those with industry partners or government on how we can actually set baseline standards of commissioning execution and project expectation.
Absolutely. That's a critical point too, because the standards are one thing, but then turning the strategy into execution is where leadership is really going to make the difference. So how do you see the advisory council helping ICxA translate this roadmap from intent into measurable outcomes with government, with project lenders, with delivery professionals, so that we can all deliver successful projects?
Yeah, well, I think like anything that's worth doing, it's going to ruffle some feathers. If we're kind of trying to change a little bit of the standard where, in our experience, commissioning is definitely not thought of till the end, and it's just a checkbox on usually a project delivery checklist, and really what our goal here is to bring commissioning to the front, and it's one of the key pieces that we want to drive from project funding and feed, and I really think that without breaking a few eggs to bake the cake here, we're gonna have to have our advisory council, and we're gonna have the industry stand together to push that forward, and that's where I'm excited about the diversity of the advisory council right now, is that we have a very wide group of different organizations. It's not one company pushing this. It's multitude of major players who want to say, yes, let's push this forward. Let's stand united on building this common goal of why commissioning needs to be a standalone piece in the project, and giving it the respect it deserves in the project space.
And you're right, there might be some ruffled feathers, even though that's not our intention, but some people just are hesitant to want to change, and that's okay. But I think you're right, there are lots of people that see the need for this change and are keen to get involved and contribute to successful delivery of projects, and partnerships are going to be key. So which partnerships do you think will have the biggest impact in advancing commissioning and outcome assurance globally?
Well, I think government and policy is going to be one that's going to be right at the forefront. If we can get policy established on why commissioning needs to be where it is, and the importance of it, is one. I think also from that, like the lender perspective, whether it's private equity or advisement councils with some of the bigger firms that do this side of work, if they're giving the advice that this is as important as it is, which we're starting to see much more regularly, is the request for having a CSU review on a project feed before it hits a funding deliverable. It's showcasing its value already. So I think those will be the two biggest ones that we see come across, and then thirdly will be as industry partners start to really adopt and take this in as a maybe a corporate standard.
I agree. Policy will be key for sure, to have that early upfront involvement of commissioning to, as you've heard many times on projects, start with the end in mind, right? And that's the key to do that, is to have commissioning upfront at the beginning of projects and plan the finish before you even begin. Now, you lead completions and commissioning for WSG Energy Services across the Americas. From your vantage point, what are the biggest shifts happening in completions and commissioning today?
Well, I think we're seeing more of a standardization, which is fantastic. So, I mean, when it comes to the terms completions, we're seeing it more used in the manner that I appreciate. I would say that the mood is shifting of being involved at the front end and getting in at feed and things like commissionability reviews and actual systemization, and like lots of the terminology of how we went from bulk construction into systemized turnovers is actually starting to become an implemented process, which I'm super happy to see that we're actually breaking those grounds more competitively. And the more I see commissioning as not a two line box on the schedule that says PSSR startup or something like that, then I know we're actually getting to a better spot where people are actually considering the application and the repercussions of not doing commissioning and having that into your master schedule, things like that. So it's coming a long ways. We're moving in the right direction.
The mood is definitely shifting, and
It is.
it is coming a long ways. I think as projects have become more complex, that more traditional iron triangle of scope, schedule, budget is really not sufficient. Even when you layer on some of the quality aspects of projects, that's still not getting projects across the finish line. The outcome assurance element, the commissioning and startup at the end, is really becoming more of a fundamental focus in order to deliver projects successfully. As projects, they're just getting too complex and more integrated, that you need an upfront approach to this, to completion of projects. So where do you see the greatest opportunity for commissioning and outcome assurance to make an immediate impact on projects?
Well, I think that where I've seen the most success is honestly with the new technologies that are coming out. Obviously, you talk about this a little bit, and some of the projects that are going today are newer technologies, and whether it's in clean tech space or in power generation or everything across the board, we're seeing different newer technologies coming out, and maybe the ROI on some of these projects is a lot tighter than traditional conventional oil and gas that we've seen in the past, where they have a tried true process where they know they're going to be able to pump these out. It might be the first of pilot projects, and that is honestly where I think the commissioning based project lead is super important, because for a lot of these investors, they want to see that when they're investing in these projects that they actually are going to work. And if we actually really focus on the startup and making sure they work at the front end, we're setting the bar right from day one.
Right. I see that as well, that projects are being reviewed, say, by a banker's engineer. They want to see that there's a plan in place up front before projects are funded, that the commissioning and startup at the end is in fact being thought about and is going to be successful. And you're right, projects are getting more complex. There's more electrical systems, more interfaces, everything's interconnected, remotely operated. Projects are just quite complex these days and require a new approach. Teams need to be communicating more effectively. Systems need to be communicating more effectively. Really, communication seems to me as one of the core values of delivering successful projects. So how can project leaders communicate commissioning and outcome assurance in a way that truly inspires confidence and alignment among stakeholders?
Well, I think that's where that, as I sit in a glass room, but that open door, that glass room policy really exists, is like setting an open standard that everyone can follow. It's not that, this black smoke of what is the commissioning dark arts. We want to be open and forefront on what we're doing. And I think that's where, I hurt some feelings by saying it, but nobody has a secret sauce. I think that the commissioning process and procedure has been around for a long time. And I think that once we set that common standard that everyone's following, we alleviate the risks. So, I think levels of commissioning change, but that's literally based off of risk tolerance. So if we can open the door and say, this is the baseline of commissioning, this is how we're going to communicate, this is our communication RACI, this is our execution RACI, we set some basic standards on, this is simple, basic 101, how we do project delivery, and how that's our communication matrix, how we're going to execute, with daily meetings on, turnover punch lists, like solid communication is honestly the failure when that breaks down on every project. So,
and you're right, there is really no secret sauce. There is a standardized systematization approach to finished projects, whether that's electrical projects or mechanical projects, oil and gas industry, chemical processing. It's all very similar, and that's what this standard will encapsulate to help everybody understand commissioning. Because you're right, it is viewed as a bit of a black art or dark magic at the end of project, but we need to help people understand what it is, right?
Well, and you kind of hit one of the things on the head that I talk to a lot is people ask, well, what's your experience? Maybe you're in like power generation, or maybe you're getting into refining, or maybe you're getting into hydrogen, and everyone's like, what's your experience? Which projects have you commissioned within this? And my answer is always the same. It says, well, does it have, a transformer? Does it have an e-house? What kind of instrumentation do we have on the project? What kind of pumps? I mean, usually the jewelry in the plant is very similar, and the process of how we systemize and break that down remains the same, and the execution philosophy, regardless of it, really doesn't change that much. And obviously you need subject matter experts within specific processes of the facility, and I don't take that away from it, but the overall process of how we commission any industry should be pretty consistent.
Should be pretty consistent, right? It's pipes, pumps, valves, motors. It doesn't matter what order or sequence or configuration those are in, whether there's oil in the pipe or chocolate sauce in the pipe, you still need the same process to make all those things work with the instrumentation, the electrical, and automation, right?
I like that one. I haven't heard the chocolate in the pipe yet. There we go.
That's right. Or could be wastewater, could be anything in the pipes,
No,
right?
100%.
Pipes, pumps, valves, motors, you all got to control them the same to make your whatever process you're trying to implement work, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So if you could send one message directly to governance, financiers, and project owners about why commissioning and outcome assurance matter, what would you want them to understand?
Well, I would say from experience, I've seen firsthand how when implemented effectively, the cost of commissioning is essentially negated. We can earn that money back throughout the project with having several project execution under my belt, where we actually came in on time, ahead of schedule, hit nameplate value ahead of schedule, and with that improved production, you're paying for costs. Never mind lost downtime, never mind damaged equipment. So when it comes to your risk tolerance, if you really truly are worried about costs and investor profiles and equipment, technology races, thinking about commissioning up front is going to be your number one weapon to make sure your project comes out ahead of the schedule and at the front of the leader pack. So
commissioning really is your number one weapon, your best and honestly cheapest method of risk mitigation on your projects to make sure that you can complete successfully at the end.
It's one of the smallest pieces if you actually look at the percentages of cost of commissioning versus procurement, engineering, construction. Commissioning is very small, so by cutting it, you're actually not saving any money, in my opinion, and you're actually just costing money to the project. So that small fee ends up earning back huge dividends.
Absolutely, yeah. The cost of commissioning itself isn't all that expensive on a project, but the cost of delays during commissioning can be astronomical, like in the order of years or billions of dollars. And it's very effective risk mitigation to prevent that from happening with upfront thoughts about commissioning.
Yeah, absolutely.
So looking ahead, what's your vision for the advisory council's role in the next 12 to 24 months?
Well, I'm excited as this movement grows, and I think that this advisory council will grow, and there's going to be opportunities to bring more leaders and mentors, and what I'm excited about is continuing the movement, and the more people that become excited about this and join this movement, the bigger power that we're going to have in actually making a change. And I'm excited about the knowledge that's already in the room. And we talked about it right from the front end on the mentorship and the education piece. And, as probably one of the younger people on the team, I can appreciate that it's kind of funny coming from myself, but I'm excited for us and this group to mentor some of the up and coming commissioning people in the world. And I really think that, the skill level has room for some mentorship, and that's no fault to the people that are coming into commissioning and the people who have commissioning on their resume, because I think as an industry, we've done a poor job of actually giving them the tools to be educated on proper commissioning. And one of the things that the advisory council, I think, is really going to do is help set the bar and give new and young commissioning people coming into the world the tools to be as good as those that are unfortunately leaving the industry. And we really need to bridge that gap, and I think the advisory council can be part of that bridging and that mentorship piece.
For sure, absolutely. I agree, to help with that knowledge transfer as our wise commissioning experts are retiring. Now, when it comes to project governance at the project sponsorship level, project executive level, how do you see ICxA positioning itself as the global authority for commissioning and outcome assurance to embed commissioning in some of these governance processes?
Well, I think it comes down to putting some proof in the pudding, and I think as we build these standards and we put them out there, having buy-in from both the companies like those who are part of the advisory council and the members of really buying into supporting what we're doing within that is the first step in leveraging it. If we as industry are not going to support and use a standard, it's not going to hold weight. So my ask is that those people who are doing commissioning projects strongly take a look at what we're putting out there and give feedback if you're on board, but you have some questions or disagree with some things. That's what the advisory council is here for, is to take that feedback and actually turn that into positive forward movement, because we want to start as a group effort moving this needle forward on pushing ICxA and commissioning governance as a standard. And the more people that stand behind it, the harder it is for those who are against it to stop it.
That's right. And there may be people listening that think, yeah, this all sounds great. This is what's needed and something that they would want to implement in their organization. But it's sometimes challenging to make that organizational transformation and make some of that change and embed some of these processes in how organizations deliver projects. So for those groups that would like to start and go down this path and start initiating some of these processes on their projects, what's the best way that they can start to have those discussions within their organizations?
I think it starts as simple as some basic conversations on, can we make some small changes? I mean, the death of a company is, this is how we've always done it, right? And I stand by. I had a great business coach who always said that if your organizational philosophy is, this is how we've always done it, we don't need to change, your business is essentially doomed. And so I think the industry, those conversations start, and it's not always a quick sell. It might be multiple conversations, but conversations about, have you checked this out? Have you seen some of the tools that are available, for free? Have you seen some of the standards that are being published right now that are already on the website? Can we cross compare this to what we have in our organization to see if there's some value in what we're actually putting out there? And I think you'd be surprised to see that we are trying to make this, across the board, and we have people from multiple industries as part of this advisory council. So we're not trying to keep it, strictly oil and gas. We're not trying to keep it to one area, geographic region. We have people from across the world advising on this and trying to truly bring in a global standard. And I think that having a look and seeing what we're providing and maybe having conversations with some of the members who are part of the advisory council or Paul and his team, I think that, we're happy to have those conversations. I have a lot of coffees actually around it right now. And I think that there's a lot of movement and there's a lot of public interest in actually seeing this move forward. And, it starts with a single conversation or a coffee, and it can turn into a pretty quick, we're going to be having some pretty good networking events and moving things forward. So
that's great advice. Yeah. For anybody watching, definitely feel free to reach out to myself or Heinz or anybody on the advisory council. And if this is something you want to get involved in, then we're looking for everyone's participation to make this a gathering of the collective wisdom of the industry to make these the global standards to define project delivery. And finally, on a personal note, what excites you most about the journey ahead that we're undertaking for ICxA, the Advisory Council, and this global movement for elevated commissioning on projects?
Well, it's probably it sounds like a selfish note, but I'm actually really excited myself to work with so many industry professionals. It's rare that you get cross company collaboration on such a wide scale, and personally, as someone who's a bit of a sponge for mentorship, the amount of knowledge within the advisory council itself is amazing, and I think that being able to be part of this and part of the the knowledge base that's here is a big one for me. And give Peter a dig. I want to sponge up some of Peter's knowledge there, and take in some of the old commissioning knowledge that the teams have, and really start to share that across my network as well.
I'll definitely second that comment for sure. That's always been my excitement with commissioning, is there's always extremely smart people involved in commissioning. And I just love being surrounded by those smart people to learn and grow and develop and figure out how I can better improve my projects as well. So I totally agree with that. And I'm excited to work with some of the smart people that are involved in this initiative as well. All right, I see we've got some questions here, so maybe I'll just shoot some questions up on the screen here, Heinz, and give you a chance to comment on some of them from some of the people involved here. So the first one is maybe just more of a comment from Rich. Had the pleasure of working alongside Heinz in his early years in commissioning. So yeah, thanks for joining, Rich. Great to see you.
Yeah, me and Rich actually worked in my very first commissioning job. We were commissioning Jackfish 2 together. It was actually probably we joke about it a lot, but that was probably the funnest job I've ever had in my life as a very young man. And we had a little bit, maybe too much fun while commissioning that project. Yeah.
I always find that too. I say this is the most fun I've had on a project. This is the best project I've worked on. I can't imagine ever having more fun on a project. And then I join the next project, and it's even a greater time. So that's great thing about commissioning, is there's lots of great people involved and lots of great relationships that are built. Great to see you, David. You are absolutely right, Heinz. We can never forget that we are the product of great leaders that helped us growing and the situation and opportunities they've given us. And that's precisely the inspiration and responsibility we have to pass on the knowledge by mentoring and helping growing the new generations.
Yeah, no, me and David, we definitely have we go for our shawarma lunches, and we have great chats about how we can be great leaders, and I really appreciate how David is a great leader in the industry, and I expect good things are coming down the pipe from David. So keep your guys' eyes open for that. So.
Anthony Davies is a member of our advisory council. He's the author of the handbook for commissioning managers. And if you haven't got a copy of that already, everyone should have that in their library as a reference for project completion. So definitely get a copy of that. Good to see you, Anthony. Mentoring is essential for developing commissioning the community. The ICxA is an excellent conduit for this.
Yeah, and from what I've seen so far from our team on the advisory council, we're all very aligned with that, which is what makes me so excited about it, is that we all have this common goal and the vision of sharing this knowledge, and I'm really excited to work with this team. So.
I've always found that too. The commissioning community is very sharing and wants to provide mentorship, and everyone is always aligned on delivering project excellence. It's a great part of the project to be involved in, and a great group of people that want to develop and build the best projects that we possibly can. Mike, great to see you, Mike. Mike is on our advisory council as well. Standardizing aspects of projects is always the goal. These standards will help drive the outcomes that projects want to have.
Yeah, it comes down to that repeatability, and obviously Mike is actually one of my personal mentors, and I think that's one thing that we talk about a lot is repeatability, and with standardized commissioning procedure, we can repeat those outcomes.
And the goal, of course, is to be able to repeat successful project delivery. So these are definitely going to help everybody. Mike's saying the same. Will help demonstrate the ROI of the project and that the end user made the right fiduciary decision to execute the project. Absolutely. I agree, Mike.
Yeah, on myself as well.
The earlier that an accurate commissioning program can be developed and given to the project, the earlier that this will be accepted and incorporated. I agree completely. Is start with the end in mind, and this is how it's done, right?
I mean, the most successful projects that I've actually been on is when the commissioning plan and the commissioning philosophy has been actually input into the EWPs or the CWPs at the front end. So that is 100% on track with what I believe as well.
And it's fundamental, not just to projects or commissioning, but really to anything in life. If you have a crystal clear understanding of what the end goal objective is, then everybody's working towards that same goal. But when you don't have that upfront discussion and everybody's working to different goals, well, then it's no surprise that the project doesn't deliver on what was expected, because everybody's got their own idea of what success looks like, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Scalability and replicability is a pivotal aspect in commissioning phase. Standardized processes make it easier to scale operations and replicate successful practices across multiple projects or locations. Also, organizations can more easily adapt standardized processes to fit different projects or environments without starting from scratch. Makes perfect sense to me.
Yep, the same. I mean, with the process, it should be completely scalable. I mean, the process you're following should stay the same, but I mean, we can cut out some of the risk later on. But the front end feed is pretty similar throughout the project. So.
Right, and that's not the goal of the standard, is to prescribe rigidly exactly what must be done on project, but to provide that framework that can be applied to the project specifics on each project. So that's our goal when we develop these standards, is to provide that framework that people can then apply to the specific unique circumstances of their projects.
Absolutely.
The ICxA efforts to document and standardize this knowledge will harmonize outcome assurance driven standards and policies across the globe. This is a global imperative given the advancement of technology and the increased complexity in modern projects. These global documents are so critical to allow navigating complexity, not only by setting clear parameters to deliver projects, but also oriented the process for identifying and categorizing uncertainties ahead of a robust decision-making process.
No, it's a good statement by David. I don't have anything to add to that. So.
Here's a question. How do we effectively convince the client not to bypass the commissioning process and good PM practices simply because of a rush to finish? We hear this on projects all the time, don't we? And when this happens, safety is a huge concern, but nonetheless, it happens. How can this mindset be adjusted, especially when there are timelines and financial concerns?
Well, I think that's the main driver on policy and why we want to get in with governance, because it then becomes a non-negotiable. If it's a funding requirement, if it's a governance policy of being allowed to bring your project online, that proper commissioning has been done, then we've truly succeeded in setting it as a project standard. Until that time, I would say that education is our best friend, and educating clients and project managers and project engineers as to why proper commissioning is vital is going to be our friend. And those are sometimes tough conversations, and I don't think we win those overnight. But the more we have them, the more people we educate, the more project engineers we get up to speed on why commissioning is important and the benefits of it across the board, the better.
Yeah, it almost seems like if there was a way to somehow put guardrails in place to protect people from themselves and help them understand the value that commissioning provides so that we can deliver successful projects. And that's something we'll look at to see how can we put those guardrails in place to guide projects to success.
And I think this is a good piece. Like if, Keith, if you guys and others that are listening, if you guys have opinions and suggestions on things that you think would be good, I mean, that's what the Advisory Council is here for. So we'd love to hear your opinions on how we can actually implement some of those things.
Absolutely, Keith. Definitely feel free to reach out and contribute your knowledge and expertise, and we can incorporate as we move forward. So Mo's got some good words congratulating you, Heinz, on your involvement in the ICxA Council and WSG's leadership. Excited to make an impact on our industry. So question, from a digital completions perspective, how do you envision owners embodying standards and responsibilities of completions governance to guide EPCs, subs, etc., ensuring a quality project at a stage gate turnover? Challenge, like you mentioned, is repetition of the process.
Yeah, as a big supporter of completion systems, I'm actually one of those people that will tell you that I'm not too keen on even taking on a project if they're not using a completion software. We're not marking up with a highlighter single lines in an e-house anymore, that era, right? Or Excel sheets commissioning, and I know that people will argue that there's a cost and a place for it, but that cost is not by cutting out something as simple as a completion software. And I think that as we start rolling out processes and procedures, it's probably going to be a good one that we need to have some serious chats around, is trying to make it not corporate and like keep it as ambiguous as possible, but I think there's a lot of values to completion software regardless of what you're using, and helping people understand that if you want repeatability, a lot of softwares help you save time and save costs by copying and pasting projects, and setting standards. And as we have lessons learned, we can easily transfer that lesson learned information but across project spaces.
Definitely agree. The days of commissioning using Excel are long gone. Projects are just too complex, so we need to be using these more sophisticated tools to complete projects.
Absolutely.
Definitely one of the strongest commissioning collection of minds I've seen in a long time. Yes, and we're thrilled to have you involved, Mike, and Heinz involvements. We're definitely gathering everyone's expertise into one place here to guide the project to successful completions and commissioning. One way is to focus to add C as commissioning at the end of every type of contract from beginning. So maybe that is, we talk about EPC, engineering, procure, construct. We're missing the C. Maybe you're referring to another C there, but I definitely agree that the commissioning component needs to be involved up front, not just the design, procurement, and construction. The goal to achieve successful commissioning and startup needs to be at the beginning of projects. Absolutely.
Yeah, agreed.
How do you see the challenge of the early stage of commissioning and system transition to the project stakeholders and final acceptance of the project to the end user through seamless project delivery?
Well, I think that's when we look at setting the standard, and from what I've seen in the past, I think with early engagement and having the right people and having the right conversations in the room is the key at the front end. So I mean, if we have buy-in from the project management team and even the funding team from day one, we're involved at the front end of the project, and that way key stakeholders are engaged throughout the project. And the thing people often forget is I don't say that you need a full massive commissioning team. It's usually small conversations early on with key minds in the room that can make very big impacts with small implications early on. And I've never been on a project, to be honest with you, that when we've had commissioning start at the front, that they were not happy with that at the end. So I think once people start seeing it, the acceptance comes in very quickly on seeing the value of having those team members early on in the project. And then from there on, it seems to be like the next projects down the line, just that's what they want. So education.
I agree. That's a good thing to put in context. We're not talking about early commissioning involvement of a team of 30 or 50 individuals doing testing involved at the beginning of a project. I think that might be the common misconception. And people say, well, yeah, we don't need testing at the beginning of projects. But those one or two key leaders to have those discussions, I think, like you mentioned, Heinz, that's key. Those conversations can guide things in the right direction through earlier stages of projects.
Absolutely.
And David's also got a point to add by setting outcome assurance driven methodologies like the ones proposed by ICxA, ensuring a common understanding of the end product and beginning with the end in mind. Absolutely. Yeah. And we're looking forward to David's contributions here as well to shape this into the industry leading method to complete projects. All right. Thanks, everyone, for your questions. Really appreciate your participation and involvement. We've got some really good insight into the Advisory Council under Heinz leadership and the next steps that we're going to be taking to shape the industry. I do want to thank you, Heinz, for sharing your vision and insights today. And I'm really looking forward personally to your contributions to this movement for improved project delivery. Your leadership is instrumental as we bring the ICxA strategic plan to life and strengthen the global confidence in project outcomes.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. I'm really looking forward to it, and I'm really looking forward to working with the full team here at ICxA. So keep your eye, for those listening, keep your eyes peeled. We're going to be putting out some great stuff.
Absolutely, yeah. And if anybody's interested in getting involved, feel free to reach out to myself or Heinz and join this movement to shape project delivery. And you can also go to our website at ICxA. You can learn about how we're partnering with industry leaders to advance outcome assurance worldwide. Visit ICxA.net and be sure to connect with Heinz on LinkedIn. Thanks for joining, everyone, and have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for listening. Are you ready to lead infrastructure projects with purpose and accountability? Join the movement at ICxA.net and unlock exclusive resources from global standards to project delivery reform and career development certification programs. Visit ICxA.net for more information.